Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Week 5 is nearly over. We've got more games to talk about. Luckily, we did not lose any top 12 Dynasty assets to season-ending IR this week. Knock on wood for, well, I guess there are no top 12 Dynasty assets playing tonight. Patrick Mahomes would be the closest. Hopefully, Patrick Mahomes and all the other players tonight make it through unscathed. But so far, we've avoided the worst this week, so no eulogies to do this week, but we can yell at Mike Vrabel a little bit. We can, although he won the game, so that's what it's always going to come back to, I guess, for these guys. A lot of interesting games, a lot of interesting player movement today. I see a lot of you guys in the chat talking about Igbuka. Interesting question. Matt Gilbert wants to know if he should regret trading Igbuka and a late 26 first for Neighbors and a third. I think it's like, would I pay that right now? No. So yeah, I guess like from that standpoint, you can regret it. But at the same time, I don't think you'll be mad about having Malik Neighbors. And I would still prefer Neighbors to Igbuka, just to be clear. So, it sucks. Hopefully you can make that first into the 112, but I've seen a lot trades age a lot worse than that. And at the end of the day, you're still going to have a top Dynasty wide receiver. But yeah, this message here from Papachino, so much for the high floor, low ceiling discourse around the rookie draft with Emeka Igbuka. Like, we do this every year with certain prospects where we just decide that they don't have a high ceiling. And I just thoroughly reject that. Like I was ahead of them. I want to say I was ahead of the market on Igbuka. I had him not like way ahead, but I had him ranked, I think like 8th in my tight end premium rookie draft rankings. And I just reject this guy doesn't have a high ceiling argument. Like, a high ceiling is just dictated by how many targets you can get. There's not really anything that would prevent Emeka Igbuka from being like an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of football player. It's just about whether he can demand volume to that degree. And there was no reason to think that was impossible for him. Just different guys win in different ways. But like, I think we talk ourselves into the Marvin Harrison type sometime and say like, look at this guy, he's big and he's fast. And well, I don't even know if he's fast, but he's big and he has the pedigree, and that's a guy with a high ceiling. But, you look at Emeka Igbuka, that's not a guy with a high ceiling. That's just a slot merchant. And I think you get yourself into hot water there. So, yeah, I'd reject most of that type of discourse. As always, guys, I am struggling to keep up with all the messages here at the top. But if you're here, I appreciate you, especially if you are a YouTube member. And we're going to talk about a lot of players today. We're going to go back to the any second round pick list. I'm going to take a couple L's from last week, bring you some new names again. Andrew, glad to see you making a live show for the first time. With a Gibson injury, is Ramondre a sell or hold? I mean, it just kind of depends what you can get for Ramondre. I had him on the any second round pick list last week. I'd put him on it again this week. The fumbles are just out of control. He's not that good of a player. I just, if you could still get a second round pick for him, especially maybe off the injury news, I would still absolutely take that. I don't care, even if he's going to be giving us low end RB2 type of usage for the rest of the year, I still think you're better off just getting out early on a player like that. I don't see any type of long term value upside for him. So, all right. Max. Oh no, and never mind. It wasn't Max. Max, what's up, dude? I thought it was you talking trash in here. It was Goldhorn talking trash. Taking L is going to be a long stream. Listen, buddy, I've got some victory laps to do too, but we're going to move on to our first segment of the day. I've been trying to mix in some different segments depending on what the week calls for. Today, I want to do some backfield talk, backfield breakdowns. We're going to start with a couple teams overview from week 5, and then we're going to look at some rookies. And I'll mix in some Q&A as well, but we're going to get through these backfields first. Starting with the Cardinals backfield, I was on Michael Carter this past week. Hayden Winks was talking about Michael Carter as probably the starter. Jacob Sanderson was on that train as well. And then some comments from Carter himself kind of led me to believe he was the starter. It just made sense that Amari DiMercato would stay in the role that he's had as a satellite back, and Michael Carter would come in and be kind of the new Trey Benson type. And that's how it played out, and it's certainly how it's going to stay now that Amari DiMercato fumbled away his chance to potentially earn a bigger role. I don't know why players keep doing that. I can't even fathom the thought of letting the ball go before I'm in the end. I don't understand how that keeps happening. It's insanely low IQ stuff, but the Cardinals backfield, Carter got 60% of the snaps, just about. He got 18 carries. He had 5 targets as well. So he had a really, really strong role in this game. Now, it was a great matchup against the Titans. So, it's not going to be 18 fantasy points every week. But if you have Michael Carter right now, I think you can confidently roll him out as a flex play until Trey Benson returns. I think he's pretty much locked that role up. So good use of Fab if you went and picked up Michael Carter. If you need to pick up a spot starter and you want to send like a 4th round pick for Michael Carter, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world that you could do. I wouldn't go above that. But if somebody has him that doesn't need him, I don't think it would be terrible to flip some Fab that way. DiMercato, probably just going to stay in his regular role, 3rd down role, satellite back role. I don't think he's going to get like cut or like severely disciplined for that, but he's certainly not going to be growing his role and becoming the 3 down back. So, D Viking J, I'm not saying that Michael Carter is going to keep doing this when Benson's back. We just don't know when Benson comes back. It's like 4 to 6 weeks is what they said. You never know for sure. So it's like, if you can get a 4-week rental of an RB2 for a 4th round pick, that's a totally reasonable price to pay. And there's still upside that it could take longer for him to return. So we just don't know. The other backfield, and I'm realizing that I can barely see my own graphics on the screen. Let me see if I can do something about that. The other backfield is the Saints. So the Saints have been sort of trending usage away from Alvin Kamara. And Kendre Miller has been the clear beneficiary of that. His snap share has risen every single week of the season, up to 41.9% in week 5. He played 26 snaps to Alvin Kamara's 33. He got 10 rush attempts to Alvin Kamara's 8. And obviously Kamara is still going to be the guy getting the targets. 6 targets for him, 1 for Miller. But this is a really encouraging development for Kendre Miller. And I think he's a guy you really want to be. I mean, obviously it would have been nicer to add him earlier on before this happened. But even now, I think you could potentially get him for a 3rd round pick. I moved him up into my late 2nd round tier, like very end of it, because there are some trade rumors around Alvin Kamara. It would make perfect sense for the team to move on from Alvin Kamara. They're not going anywhere this year. He is still a good pass catcher, but he's not that good anymore. Like, he's not a good rusher anymore. I just think it would make perfect sense for a team that is competing, needs a running back. Like, send him to the Bears or something. Send him to the Chiefs. somewhere. I know that we wishcast this stuff and it never happens, but there have been some reports about trading him. Again, it would just make perfect sense for the Saints to move on, and Kendre Miller could slide right into the lead role. Now, he wouldn't just get an Alvin Kamara type of target share, but he would be a starting player for the team. And Kendre himself is only 23 years old. He doesn't turn 24 until next June. So even though this is his third season, he was an insanely young rookie. He'll be entering his last year of his rookie deal next year at 24 years old. So there is a world where he could be the clear starter for the team down the stretch this year and even next year. I think it's worth a speculative ad on him. So that's all. That's all I want to say on Kendre. Welcome to the potential breakouts, Maximum Heat. Looks like you just signed up. That's going to get you access to the private Discord channels and the weekly live streams that we do here on YouTube. If you want to check out the Dynasty rankings, you got to go up the next tier up, just so you know. But either way is cool with me. So those two backfields are interesting. I did want to talk on the Michael Carter thing a little bit for a second. Players like Michael Carter that pop up throughout the year, and we've seen a lot of these guys, these players that you could start in a pinch if you need to. We've seen a lot of them at quarterback this year in Mac Jones, Carson Wentz. This past week, Jake Browning worked out for you. Dylan Gabriel, if you had to start him. We've seen a lot of these quarterbacks. We've seen running backs pop up. We might be able to start like a Kamani Vidal next week. We've had Jordan Mason pop up from relatively low cost. Other guys I'm probably not thinking of right now. Austin Eckler was looking like one of those types of players before he got hurt. So the point being, a lot of these cheap starting options pop up on Dynasty waivers or guys that you have deep stashed on your bench that become startable. And it's part of my case for why I don't want to be sinking a lot of my roster value into depth players. I don't want to have a lot of expensive depth. You want guys on your bench that can benefit. Like I want handcuff running backs on my bench, right? Like a Tyler Algier type, like a Trey Benson, who a Trey Benson type would have worked out really well if he hadn't gotten hurt, obviously. But I don't want expensive depth players. And I feel like there are too many dynasty managers who want to trade their picks away, who want to trade their assets away to stack up the bench so that they have everything covered. They have every possible outcome covered, and there's nothing that can go wrong. It's like they're building their team as if trades get turned off the second that week one comes. And I don't think you should play Dynasty that way. I think you want to put yourself in a position to benefit from uncertainty. Kendrick Bourne is another good one in the chat that was just mentioned as a guy that was a good spot start. You want to benefit from uncertainty. So that's why you want to have like those depth running backs, and you want to have a bunch of like rookie dart throws on your bench. You don't want to go out and get a bunch of the expensive players, because sometimes those players don't even pan out. Like if you went and paid for Calvin Ridley top dollar this offseason, he has not been helpful for you. Like he had a good game this week when he was on everyone's bench. He hasn't been good at all in your lineup. And if you've been relying on him as a depth option to this point, he has screwed you over. And that's the case for a lot of these guys. So I think you should be more comfortable being uncomfortable entering the season. You should be fine entering the year with a lineup that looks a little bit thin, where like, you have an injury or two, you don't know what you're going to do about it, because these free guys are going to pop up that you can use. Trade options are going to pop up for teams that go into rebuilds. So just be comfortable being uncomfortable. I played Michael Carter in some leagues this week, and guess what? It felt pretty good because he came through with a lot of points. I have started Carson Wentz this year. I've started Mac Jones this year. I started Jake Browning yesterday in a league, and he scored a bunch of points. It's okay to just rely on these guys that pop up and use them. The question about how long Kendrick Bourne is startable, I think he's startable until Jennings and Pearsall are active. Like I think after that, it's a hard stretch. It's a stretch that he's going to get enough routes to do anything like what he did this past week. Any week that Jennings and or Pearsall are out, then fire him up, I guess. He seems to be the preferred target. So that would be my thought there. Okay. So we're going to move on from that. Let's talk about some rookies. Let's talk about some rookie running backs and how their roles changed from weeks 4 to 5. Oh yeah, Kenny Gainwell is another one of those guys that I started Kenny Gainwell 2 different weeks. One week he got me like 10 points, and then I started him the week he scored like 30 points. Again, guy that was basically free off of waivers that turned in usable production for you. So yeah, put yourself in that position. Looking at some rookies here. These are how rookies changed from weeks 4 to 5. And some of them were frustrating. Well, actually, I'd say 3 of the 4 were frustrating. One of them was really cool. First one being Woody Marks, who in week 4 really seemed to be having a breakout. 58.5% of the snaps. He got 17 carries and 5 targets. He had 18.7 expected points per game. He was like the darling waiver pickup after week 4. And it seemed obvious that he was just going to continue to have this massive role, and he was going to be maybe not a league winner, but like a solid starting option rest of season. That completely changes in week 5. He has his snaps reduced. He gets just 7 carries and 1 target, scores only 2.4 fantasy points. Sometimes you're going to deal with this type of stuff with rookies. Rookie usage is not always going to be linear, and it can be very frustrating. It's just part of the deal. With rookies, you're going to get some really big hits mixed in, but you're also going to have some frustrating usage. There's a lot of boomer coaches in the NFL, a lot of bad decision makers, and sometimes rookies just aren't ready to take on those full workloads. We have to kind of balance all that stuff. By the way, can you guys see these numbers well enough? Just let me know for the future if I need to like make them bigger. I'm not sure how well you can see them, but I was trying to fit a lot of information on the screen here. But yeah, so that's the change for Woody Marks. I'm not really changing my opinion of Woody Marks as far as how I have him ranked. Now, I wasn't one of the people going crazy out to best case scenario that he was worth like a late first or early second. I have him in my base 2 tier. He is a 24-year-old day 3 rookie running back who has no assurances beyond this year. But I do think that he's worth that kind of mid-second round value. I still think better days are ahead that are closer to week 4 than week 5. So I still, if you want to buy low on Woody Marks after this week, go try to buy low on this guy. That's like, I think that makes sense. You guys are telling me it's small. Okay. Well, let me try to make it a little bit bigger, at least a little bit bigger. But I'll try to work on that for next time. If I can put this in a format that's a little bit easier to see. So doing my best. I'll read off I'm going to read off as many of the relevant numbers as I can, but I did want you to be able to see it. So that's Woody Marks. Again, I would buy low if people are freaking out. Like, there's going to be ups and downs, but at the end of the day, I think he's just a better option all around than Nick Chubb, and he's got that pass catching upside. Trevion Henderson is the one that comes next, and he's the one that's really frustrating. It's interesting because watching the game, you wouldn't think this, and I actually wasn't able to watch the entire game. I can't stay up that late on Sunday nights just based on my schedule. But as I was following the game and looking back through the box score and everything, it just didn't feel like this was the case, but he actually had his snap share jump from 29% to 48%. So he played a lot more snaps, and that makes sense because Antonio Gibson got hurt, unfortunately tore his ACL like relatively early on. I think it was first half. And so that brings them down to really the 2 running backs with Ramondre and Henderson. So he got the snaps, and he actually had pretty similar usage to the prior week. He had 6 carries and 3 targets compared to 7 carries and 2 targets the week before. He just didn't get in the end zone, which was the main difference. Expected points were pretty much the same. The frustrating part is just that it feels like he should be getting a larger opportunity at this point. Like, Ramondre has not been impressive, and he's been fumbling the ball all over the place. Yes, Isaac. As far as I know, Antonio Gibson tore his ACL. That's what I saw. I maybe double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's the news we got. So these fumbles are out of control with Ramondre Stevenson, and he's not that good of a player. I can't guarantee that Trevion Henderson is an amazing football player. I thought he looked great as a prospect. He seems to have the skill set. He looked good in the preseason. He simply hasn't gotten enough of a runway this year to say one way or the other. But to me, this just feels like Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniel being boomer coaches. Like, I just don't know what we're supposed to I just don't know what we're supposed to make of this with Henderson. So, oh my gosh. Are you guys serious right now? Are you guys being for real? Amari and Hampton to IR? Why can't we have nice things, dude? This sucks. Why can't we ever have nice things? So many players, man. So many good players just dropping like flies. Did they say the nature of the injury? Like what kind of, like, is it IR like he's going to be back in 4 weeks, or is it like IR like he's out for a while? I'm just going to look it up. No offense, guys. I just don't really trust you. I believe that he's on IR, but I need to know the full thing. This sucks, dude. So just to be clear, I have no idea which backup you want on Hampton. I think if you're shooting for like quote unquote upside, I think maybe Kimani Vidal. I suspect Hassan Haskins will be the guy that gets the goal line work. He's probably the safer option. And I know he's I think Haskins is like a special teamer, so he'll definitely have a role. But man, that sucks. I have some good teams, man, that need Amari and Hampton right now. Well, I'm going to be starting Michael Carter in a lot of leagues next week, I suspect. He's out at least 4 games. 4 games. Okay. Well, I really, really hope that this is not like a full season injury, or that this is like the fact that he went to IR so quickly is just very concerning to me. Like if it's like, maybe he'll miss 4 games, it feels like they might wait a little bit and kind of see what happened. So I don't know. That sucks. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming, I guess. If you are, this is so true. Nico, you're so right. Why didn't they keep Raheem Sanders? This could so be Raheem Sanders' time. That sucks. They really should have kept him. Yeah, so I mean, if you are without Hampton and you're looking for what do I do now, I think Rico Dowdle's probably going to have 1 more week at least as the starter. I think you're going to want to go look at Michael Carter at this point if you can. Maybe send that 4th round pick. And otherwise, I don't really know what to tell you. You could try to swing a second for somebody like Tony Pollard, like go buy low on Woody Marks, J.K. Dobbins. It's a tough spot to be in. I'm not going to eulogize Amari and Hampton because I don't think that I refuse to believe that he's going to be out for the year. We'll see Hampton back. He can still be a playoff hero. So we're just going to cross our fingers on that one. All right. Let me get back to work here. TreVeyon Henderson, again, should be getting more opportunities. I did have to move him down a little bit in the rankings, and we'll talk about fallers in a little bit. I still lean more in than out on Henderson, but the reality is he's just not scoring points, and that's frustrating because you drafted him highly to score points. There are guys that go, Egbuka went after him. Judkins went around him after him most of the time. He's scoring points. Tyler Warren's scoring points. This guy's not. He's just kind of sitting there on the bench. If you have him in Hampton, you're throwing him in the lineup certainly next week, but it's brutal. RJ Harvey had kind of a rug pull moment. Looked like things were going well for him in week 4, got up to 41% snaps, 14 attempts, 5 targets. He had some manufactured touches. He looked fantastic. It was against the Bengals, which you always have to take with a grain of salt because they are one of the least serious franchises in the NFL right now. But his role scales way back against the Eagles yesterday. Tyler Bidet played a lot more. He played like 16 snaps versus 8, and Harvey kind of matched that. Only 4 carries in this one, 3 targets. It's just, again, up and down with Harvey. I never expected J.K. Dobbins to look as effective as he has looked so far. It's been a bit of a trend for me this year is just players that I was out on it seemed like it was over for them, and they did come back and actually look decent. We've seen it with Javonte Williams, who's looked more than decent. We've seen it with Dobbins. We've seen it with Kyle Pitts to an extent. So yeah, it's surprising. I still think Harvey brings an element that Dobbins doesn't have, and I still think it should be more of an even split between them because he does really bring that explosive element. He hasn't done anything wrong from what I can see when he's been on the field. Like I have no doubts about his talent relative to what I evaluated him as coming out. I think he is a great player, and I think he's going to find his way into a larger role, but it's like you can't start him right now. That's the thing. You just can't play him unless you think it's a blowout situation for the Broncos where it's a little safer bet that he's going to get on the field. Last one, though, we can at least be happy about one freaking rookie running back in Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who from week 4 to week 5 really hit his breakout. Week 4, just 33% of the snaps. He had 7 carries and 2 targets. He was efficient on those, as he always is, but it was still frustrating to see him sharing so much of the work with Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols. I had JCM as a buy in this week's video. If you guys watched it, hopefully you were able to maybe add a share of Bill Krosky-Merritt, and I feel good about this call. I didn't necessarily think it was going to happen immediately, but man, he gets to just 50% of the snaps here, but much, much better. 50% of the rush attempts, 14 total carries. He got 2 targets as well, and he was fantastic. He was ripping off 10-yard plays over and over and over and over again. And this is what I was kind of saying about JCM, which was that like the results were there and people were down on him because he hadn't already taken over the backfield, but there was always a good chance that this could happen sooner or later. It seems like it's happened sooner. I see no reason why Chris Rodriguez should come back and be that sort of de facto starter again. It seems like this is Bill's backfield, and we're going to see a lot of awesome games like this. And with Jaden Daniels healthy, it just opens up even more rushing lanes. So we've got a guy that breaks these big plays. He's kind of like Brian Robinson now, except if Brian Robinson was good. So think about that. That's kind of the player you have at this point. You're going to get these explosive plays. You're going to get some designed passing game work, and you're going to get a lot of goal line touches, I think, from JCM. So you should feel really good. I moved him up to early second. All right. Chris, you are legitimately so late to the game here. We already talked about this. We have already mourned it and kind of moved on. Honestly, someone saying Gus Bus in the chat, like they probably will sign somebody like Gus Edwards. Maybe they'll trade for Alvin Kamara. I don't know what they're going to do. It feels untenable to ride with Kamani Vidal and Hassan Haskins, but you know, who am I to say? If they're going to trade capital, they probably need to trade for an offensive lineman at this point. So I don't know what they're going to do. We're going to move on to the any second list though. This is a segment we've been doing for a little bit now. And the premise of the any second list, and I guess I need to put this on here because people keep getting confused. It is that these are players that I would trade away for any second round pick. So basically the idea here is you have these players that hover around second round value in Dynasty, and a second round pick is just a very useful asset in that it's very fluid. It's easy to trade, and they can end up being a lot more valuable than you think at the time. Like they feel like these kind of throwaway pieces to some people, but you stack up enough seconds, you can do a lot of damage with those. And so if you can tactically just flip players for second round picks at opportune times, you can sort of keep replenishing the value on your roster and avoid these dead assets that just become roster cloggers. So I've had some bad calls on this, players that have bounced back and provided value. I had Mason Taylor on this list, and I think in tight end premium leagues at this point, he would need to be taken off that list. And Stephon Diggs as well has really shown signs of life recently. So I would take those guys off the list if I could go back and do it. But otherwise, I think if you've gotten second for any of these players, I think you're doing pretty well on the other hand. And so this week, the list is going to keep getting shorter. I'm going to try to stick to like 3 or 4 names every week, because otherwise I'm just going to run out of players. And there's just not always a ton of movement in that range. And I don't want to put players that are entirely unrealistic on this screen. I want to put players that like I can at least squint and see how you could get a second round pick for them. So I think this week, Rachaad White is one. We're seeing him come off of another inefficient game where he scores 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving is going to be out again next week. Maybe he'll be back the week after, but we don't know for sure. So it's like, if someone's really in a pinch, maybe they just lost Hampton to IR, I could see how you could get a second for Rachaad White as like, hey, this guy you can start the next couple weeks, and then he's a really good handcuff after that, and you can get that pick. I think that's possible. T, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. Glad you could pop in. My other guy is Dylan Gabriel. Look, Dylan Gabriel wasn't terrible in his first game. Like he did what he had to do. It's just that I really struggle to believe that Dylan Gabriel has the goods to be an actual like NFL starting quarterback. I think it's really, really unlikely that he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns at the very least, like in 2026, even if he is the guy the rest of this year. He doesn't have the arm strength. He's really small. Like he basically has to be Drew Brees, and he's on a bad team. So it's just, I think that selling for a second, you're going to work out better most of the time than if you were to hold on to him and hope that he can pan out. I think you're just more than likely going to get a better player for a second round pick. And then Cooper Kupp is the last one. He got 9 targets this week. He's whatever, he's a guy you can flex if you have to, but like it's a run heavy team. He kind of has these weeks where he comes in and out. Some weeks he'll be more featured, some weeks he's not. But even in his good weeks, you're talking about a low ADOT guy, doesn't really create a lot on his own. You're hoping for like 12 points if you put him in your lineup, and that's like your good case. And so I think obviously he's pretty much at the end of the road here for him. So another one of those guys, if someone is really desperate for someone they can play and they're willing to reach out for the name brand value, that's an easy accept button for me. So we're gonna move on from that. Rich, yes, this is good value. If you can cash out on Besh at this point for a second, I think you need to be happy about that. He's hovering in the lower half of my early 3rd round pick tier, and I mean it feels pretty over for Jack Besh. So yeah, I think getting a 2nd round pick for him at this point is awesome. So that's the list for any seconds. We're going to get into some risers and fallers in a second, but we can do questions for a little bit, Q&A here before I jump into those risers and fallers for the last like 25 minutes or so. I'll jump into this one from Shocked Emoji. What are your thoughts on Seahawks tight end AJ Barner? I have an offer of Terrence Ferguson and a 2 and a 3 for him. Accept that trade. Leave the stream and go accept the trade and then come back. I see, this is why I get so annoyed when I mention transactions that you can try to make, and then people hit me with like, well, that would never happen in a real league. Nobody would ever do that. Like, that's an insane offer. A 2nd and a 3rd and Terrence Ferguson for AJ Barner. Anything can happen in any league. So don't ever come at me with like, that would never happen in a dynasty league. Like, no, it literally could happen. That's insane. As far as AJ Barner, like he's a real player. He's legitimately a solid player. So don't take that reaction to mean like he sucks. He's a solid player. He is not a full-time tight end on his team because they do use Elijah Arroyo. They kind of mix those 2 tight ends, and they do these little mix and match. They do a lot of 2 tight end stuff, but then they also take Barner off the field sometimes. So he's not a full-time tight end. His main calling card has been blocking, but he's clearly improved as a pass catcher. He had 7 catches for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, I think what you can say about Barner is he has entered into the sort of desperation touchdown or bust tight end tier. I don't think you can really raise him above that, but that's still a big boost from where he was, which was like not on the radar at all. I would be fine selling him for a 3rd round pick if you're not like actively using him. I don't think that there's like major role growth still to come for AJ Barner. I don't know for sure. He's not really a player I've ever paid a lot of attention to, but they just drafted Elijah Arroyo in the 2nd round. Again, this is a run heavy team. It runs through Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, this was a pretty rare game in terms of the number of dropbacks that the Seahawks had. So no, I mean, I don't think anything like what we saw yesterday is sustainable for Barner, but he's worth picking up in a tight end premium league. If he's on the waivers, you should pick him up for sure. Yella, I'm not going to answer this question. Well, I will answer it because I don't want people to be confused. No, I'm not. I'm not taking any 2nd round pick for Josh Downs. He's too good. All right. J2 Prison, value of Rico to trade away. I mean, you can start by asking for a 2nd. You probably won't get it. You can try for a 2-3 swap after that. That you could get. And if not, I would try for like a 3rd and a 4th round pick. Like, Rico Dowdle is not going to remain the clear starter when Hubbard is back. Even if they do have more of a split, it's not going to be like this. And he's not going to be a starter on some other team next year. I just think that's really, really unlikely. So that's what I would say. Who is droppable in this list? Connor, Neal, Sanders, Hunter, Tucker. You can definitely drop Sanders. And then after that, I'd say, I think you can, I think I'd rather just have Connor than Tucker probably. I mean, they're all droppable just depending on the depth of your league and like what's on waivers. But I'd say Sanders first, then Tucker, then Hunter, then Connor. No, that's I don't know. Hunter, Neal, and Connor all kind of in the same range for me. It's just, it's hard to see those other rookie running backs like ever contributing something, but maybe Connor comes back and is still a guy next year, you know? What would you offer for Fannin? I would try like a 2nd and a 3rd in a tight end premium league. See where that gets you. I have him in my early 2nd tier. I would rather not trade a 2nd that looks early right now because I just don't think the market is there with him. But like a late 2nd and a 3rd, I think is totally possible. Hey, I like what this guy's saying here. D Viking J says, like the stream. While you're liking the stream, if you want to go ahead and subscribe to the channel, if you're not already subscribed, that's pretty cool. I also have a pinned link in the chat and in the description as well that gives you access to the member options. If you want to see the Dynasty rankings that are updated weekly, I just updated them today. I update them every Monday to get these lists together to figure out these risers and fallers. If you want to be in the private Discord where the members will attest, I seemingly never stop talking. And if you want to be in the weekly live streams, we do those every Friday or Saturday. And this past week, we did a Dynasty startup mock draft, kind of predicting what 2026 is going to look like. That was pretty fun. So a lot of cool things going on for the members. I think it's a good value for the cost. So check that out if you want to as well. Question from N4, thoughts on Njoku going back to being the star while Fannin just received a 0 ADOT screen looks. I don't really care about this. I think it's just like goes back and forth. I think Fannin has shown himself to be like a good and versatile player. I don't know if it was just some kind of a matchup they liked or they trusted Njoku to be the safety blanket for the rookie. I think it's a good look for Njoku and that he has maybe a little bit more value than I gave him credit for with Gabriel in the lineup. I think with Flacco was more keen to push it downfield to the wide receivers, whereas Gabriel seems content to just keep it underneath with the tight ends. I think that's going to help both of these guys for as long as he's the starter, and it's going to hurt Jerry Jeudy. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not really panicking on Fannin, I guess, is the answer to that question. Maximum Heat. There is a link to the Discord in the description of this video and every other video that I post. You can get into the Discord for free. And then if you go to the channel that says member info, it'll show you how to sync up your YouTube account to your Discord account. And that's going to get you the member role automatically. Video Vandal wants the general philosophy on rookies who have shown nothing this far into their rookie season. Blue, Jarquez Hunter, Besh, etc. Well, for running backs, it's different than it is for wide receivers, I think. Running backs are such an opportunity driven position. Like, you just need to be handed touches. And I guess you could say for like Jaden Blue, it's disappointing that he was inactive, but he did manage to get active. If he stays active, he's going to have some contingent value. I think those types of running backs are guys I just want to get thrown into deals. I'm not like actively going out of my way to get them, but there's no point trying to sell them because they don't hold any value. And it can't hurt to get them thrown in because some of these guys are going to pop up just randomly and they're going to start and they're going to score points. Like Isaac Garendo, I think, is a good example of this last year, where he was just an afterthought kind of all season. He had some hype in rookie draft season, did basically nothing the whole year, and then pops up because Jordan Mason gets hurt. He pops up as the third running back on the team. There's no reason that couldn't happen for a Jarquez Hunter, that it couldn't happen for a Jaden Blue, even a Devin Neal at some point. Like, imagine Kamara gets traded, Devin Neal becomes the backup, and then Kendre Miller gets hurt. So there's a lot of ways that can happen. I want those guys on my team. When it comes to the wide receivers, especially Jack Besh, who had every opportunity to break into a very weak room of Deontay Thornton and Trey Tucker just not being able to do it, especially with the high draft capital that he received. I'm just less optimistic that that's going to work out. And that part of that is that I didn't have a ton of conviction in the prospect in the first place. But I think with guys like Jalen Knoll, Trey Harris, Jack Besh, I think we should start to be kind of worried that Kyle Williams too. I think we should start to be pretty worried that these guys aren't going to do much. So my general philosophy is I don't have much optimism for them. Certainly, if you can still cash out for a second, I want to do that. I generally don't find a lot of success doing that. I think it's more like if you're trying to make a larger deal work, you can maybe tempt the other manager with this little upside pick and like, hey, I'll throw in Jack Besh. Hey, I'll throw in Kyle Williams. And that can maybe get a deal over the edge because they get what they feel is something with value. So I think that's maybe how I want to do it. You know, I have some of those players sitting on rosters right now, and I just haven't known what to do with them really. It's not impossible that one of them will still bounce back, but it's also not uncommon for us to see second and third round wide receivers totally flame out. We've seen it with like Tyquan Thornton. We've seen it with Sky Moore. We saw it with David Bell, De'Ami Brown. Like, it happens all the time. All right, what else we got? 12-team Superflex, 0.25 points per carry, traded away Tua and Browning for a second, and a fourth. Good moves. I like those moves because you had extra quarterbacks there. Browning is pretty much worthless for any team that's not starting him right now. And so 2 seconds for Tua is a very good return. I like that. For how much should you sell Monty? I'd be trying to sell him for around early second value after this past week where he had a nice game. You can go and look at where he's valued on Fantasy Calc. I think I prefer a lot of the players that are sitting around him. I have him ranked more in the like mid to late second round range. So some players I have ahead of him would be like I'd rather have Stephon Diggs, I think, rest of season. I'd rather have Woody Marks. I'd rather have Jordan Mason. I'd rather have like Jake Ferguson if that's possible. Travis Etienne. Certainly Javonte. I don't think you're getting Javonte at this point. But yeah, those would be some guys. All right, let's see what else we got. Temperature read on Isaiah Bond. He got 8 targets, I think, right? That's pretty bullish. The problem is that Dylan Gabriel's not that good, and I don't think he's going to be that good. I think it's just kind of a hold situation with Bond and just don't expect much this year. But it's totally possible that he could blossom into a larger role in the future. Video Vandal, we have to be worrying about Jaden Higgins for sure. I'm slightly less worried than I am about some of those other names because he has mixed in for a splash play here or there, and he has slightly higher draft capital. Like, he was very early second round pick. And also the Texans are just a mess right now. So I'm kind of like taking some of the blame off of him because they seem to just not know what they're doing at all with the wide receiver rotation. Like, they're looking for some kind of identity with these guys. I don't necessarily think Xavier Hutchinson is a dude. I'm not rushing out to add him. And I don't think the fact that he had a decent game really says much about him. But yeah, you have to be worried. I've moved him down considerably since the rookie draft season. He's in my late second round tier. So I would not be upset at anybody selling Higgins for a second. Let's put it that way. All right. So John Atlas says, Josh McDaniels' apprehension to play Travion gives me hope that maybe he's just being stubborn with Kyle Williams. I agree with that he is being stubborn. But at the same time, Kyle Williams is getting some reps. And he's not getting targeted on those reps. Like, he ran, okay, like, I know it's not a lot, but he ran 7 routes last week. Or I should say last night. He didn't get a target on those routes. Like, they're not designing touches for him when he's on the field. They're not like designing reads for him. And so it's kind of concerning. Like, at least when Jaden Higgins gets on the field, he'll occasionally catch like a 24-yard pass, right? Even Jalen Knoll scored a touchdown yesterday. Now, granted, I think I could score a touchdown on the Baltimore Ravens defense, but it's just, he's getting some usage and he's not doing anything. So it's just kind of definitely concerning to me. Thanks, Brendan. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, let's get to the risers and fallers here, if you guys don't mind, because I do want to keep this to close to an hour if I can, and we're actually running a little bit out of time here. So let's talk about, spoilers. Let's talk about risers first. I'm going to try to run through these pretty quickly. Some of them we've touched on, maybe not many of them. So first one is JSN. And the 2 players at the top of this list are 2 of the players I've been notoriously like the most wrong on since I started this YouTube channel. So it's pretty cool seeing them here on the risers list. Rest assured, I have a combined 0 shares of these 2 players on my 31 Dynasty team. So it brings me no joy to report that Jackson Smith-Njigba is simply that guy. I don't know what else we're supposed to say at this point about what he's doing this year. I've moved him up to my Dynasty wide receiver 4. And just to help us keep track of this, I'm actually going to throw this on the screen just so we can keep track of what we're doing here. I really just don't know what else I'm supposed to say. He's my fourth overall wide receiver in Dynasty. He did it again this week on a 30% targets per route run at a 12.4 ADOT. Like, this guy was a little slot player his first 2 years in the league. He has just fully evolved to like a do-it-all wide receiver who wins everywhere. He has an insane 4.34 yards per route run right now. Like, that would be like one of the best marks in history if it keeps up. So, yeah, what else is there to say about JSN? 19.9 points per game this year on a team that's not even throwing the ball that much. He is unreal. Quinshon Judkins, though, he passes the eye test for sure. My concerns about him, outside of the legal stuff, like during the draft process, when, to be fair, I was still above the market in overall because I'm always above the market on rookies. I was below the market in the rookie draft ADP. Thankfully, the players I had him behind, one of the players I had him behind was Igbuka, who has worked out in his own right. But yeah, I had him too low, and I was worried about his inefficiencies in college and how that was going to translate, because I just wasn't sure if he was really that good or if he was just a volume guy. But he looks great so far. He is ripping off these big chunk runs, even when the passing game is not that much of a threat. He had 23 of 29 running back rushes in the game. So he is dominating the volume. you can't avoid moving him up. Like, he's super young, he has the draft capital, he looks great as a rusher, and the offensive situation can't get much worse. So you have to like that. I will say, I think there are still some limitations, at least for the rest of this season, as far as the offense being bad. Like, he didn't get a touchdown this past game. It could be, touchdowns can be hard to come by in this type of situation. And then the other thing is, he doesn't really, I mean, so far at least, he doesn't really run routes. He had 2 targets in the game. That's probably the type of role you should expect from him, for him most of the time, is sort of Jonathan Taylor-esque usage, or at least early career Jonathan Taylor-esque usage, where he's going to get the majority of the running back rushes. He's probably not going to be used much in like the 2-minute drill, 3rd and long situations, and he's probably not going to get a ton of targets. But all that being said, he's still my RB8 at this point. And I did just flip him ahead of Trevion Henderson, as much as it hurt me to do so. Then we have Jalen Waddle, who is thankfully a player that I can enjoy rising in the rankings, because I actually have Jalen Waddle on Dynasty teams. First game without Tyreek Hill. Very, very promising for Jalen Waddle. 29% targets per out run, 3.55 yards per out run. Those are elite numbers. He had 9 targets in the game, 6 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. He is doing a little bit of everything now with Tyreek Hill out, and it's just going to be a very consolidated passing game. So I've moved him up to wide receiver 22. The thesis with Waddle was always like, what can he do when Hill is not there? Well, we're going to find out, because Hill is not going to be there the rest of this year, and he's not coming back. So Waddle is the wide receiver 1 for this team until further notice. I moved him up to wide receiver 22, and you can certainly argue he should be even higher. I think it's an interesting conversation, Jalen Waddle versus A.J. Brown in Dynasty. You guys let me know which way you lean, because I'm honestly leaning towards flipping Waddle ahead of A.J. Brown in my rankings at this point. Then we have these 2 quarterbacks that I'm just putting together, Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold, because it's sort of similar with these 2 guys. Like, I had them lower in the rankings. I had Darnold ahead, obviously, most of the summer, because he was a clear starter. But I had these guys lower because I just didn't really trust what it was going to look like for them as starters. Sam Darnold going away from the Vikings bubble, and then Daniel Jones, who outside of that one season really has never looked very good. It's been for freaking fantastic for these 2. I mean, you can argue about how much of it is scheme and how much of it is them, but the bottom line is that they've both played excellent football to this point, and there's really nobody waiting in the wings. Like, we had JJ McCarthy lurking over Sam Darnold's shoulder last year. There's nobody waiting in the wings. The team is not turning to Anthony Richardson. The team is not turning to Jalen Milroe. These guys are obviously playing out the rest of this season, but I don't really see any reason why they wouldn't be expected to start next year. So you have to bring these guys up. I've moved them both into my late round 1 tier, because I think that there is some staying power with these guys. Daniel Jones is right now the QB 13 in points per game, really the QB 12 if you just combine the 2 49ers quarterbacks into one guy. So QB 12 in points per game at 19.4. Sam Darnold is a little bit lower, QB 21 at 17.1, but he's had a couple of like lopsided games where he didn't have to throw very much. Overall, he's looked very good when throwing the ball, especially yesterday. I know he had that 1 interception that was kind of unfortunate, but he had a great game against the Buccaneers, and he was going, stride for stride against Baker in that one. Isaac, I can't say for sure whether BTJ is going to get 17 points tonight. I mean, he hasn't done it yet, so that's probably a good sign for you. If I had to bet one way or the other, I would bet no, but it's certainly possible if he gets in the end zone for once. So those are the 2 quarterbacks there. I think you have to prefer both of them to someone like Justin Fields right now. And I think you can certainly argue either of these 2 ahead of guys like Trevor Lawrence or even JJ McCarthy. I still have them behind right now, but I don't know why, if I'm being completely honest. Next, we get to JCM. I'm not going to spend long on JCM because we already talked about him, but he has breakout game. I've moved him up to my RB21 spot. I moved him just ahead of Derrick Henry in my rankings, who's going to appear on the fallers list. Dude looks great. There's still limitations in the sense that he is older for a rookie and he doesn't catch a ton of passes, but he looks like a freaking fantastic rusher. Every time he touches the ball, good things happen. He's leading the league in so many advanced categories, like statistics as a rusher. And you just have to be excited about what he's going to do the rest of the year. Stephon Diggs is next. He looked like vintage Stephon Diggs last night, and that was after a game where he had already looked much better in week 4, where they were blowing out the other team and he didn't have to play that much. He's just immediately, I mean, not immediately, but he has ramped up quickly from this ACL tear to become the focal point of the offense. And I think his rise is certainly in line with what you would expect from an older player who was limited to start the year and is starting to feel like themselves again. He had 12 targets on just 22 routes last night. That's 10. He had 10 catches for 146 yards on 22 routes. He's just playing great football, and there's no other wide receivers on that team that are going to challenge him. And Drake May is the truth. That's the other thing that's really great here, is that Drake May is good enough to cover over some of the other deficiencies of this team. So this is a 3-2 football team. This is not the worst offense in the NFL like it was last year. This is a really good, I don't know about really good. This is a solid offensive environment, not a disastrous one. And long-term, feel really good about Drake May. So I like Stephon Diggs as a guy you can maybe go and try to buy right now if you are looking for some wide receiver help. I don't know how much more you have to pay right now on top of a second-round pick, but I've moved him up to base 2. Mason Taylor comes next. This is one that I just got wrong. I didn't love Mason Taylor as a prospect, so it was really easy for me to kind of leave him for dead after a couple of quiet weeks. But he's gotten way more involved the last 2 games. He has totally dusted Jeremy Ruckert, and now he is the clear full-time tight end. He ran 81% of the routes in week 5, and he had a ridiculous 12 targets on those routes. It's a bad offense that is in garbage time a lot, and he is a garbage time king at this point. Like, they're trying to catch up, and they're just dinking and dunking it to Mason Taylor. And the only other pass catchers worth anything on this team are Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So there's a ton of opportunity available in these negative game scripts where the Jets can't run as much as they want to, and Taylor is the main beneficiary. So I'm not going to go crazy with him, but he is up to my tight end 12. And he's back up into the second round conversation for me. Kendre, we talked about, again, doesn't turn 24 till June. Kamara's usage is dwindling. Kamara could be traded, and he's looked solid himself. So, just trying to speculate on a player who could become a starting running back for the Saints. And lastly, we get to Darren Waller, who was a hero of week 5. He jumped up to 65% of the routes after hardly playing at all in week 4, despite the 2 touchdown catches. So he was ramped up quickly to a larger role. He is basically just a wide receiver for them. Like, he almost never is left in for blocking situations, but he is the wide receiver 2 on this team. The passing game at this point is just Achane, Waddle, and Waller the rest of the year. There's nobody else on this team that's going to earn targets. It's just Achane, Waddle, Waller. Those 3 guys are going to make up like 70% of the targets. So you want all 3 of those players in your lineups. I've moved him up to my tight end 24. I have no issue sending a 3rd round pick for Darren Waller in tight end premium formats if you are hurting at tight end. And I would say if you have Alvin Kamara right now, I don't really think there's much point in selling unless you're still getting like early 2nd round value at least. If you can still get early 2nd round value, then I'm cool with that. Like, I'd rather have JCM at this point. I'd rather have Jalen Warren. I'd rather have Javonte. I'd rather have Deebo Samuel. I'd rather have like Michael Pittman, Devontae Adams. But I just don't know how many of those players you're going to be getting for Kamara right now. And if not, I think you can hold him and just hope he gets traded because he's still startable right now. It's just not like high ceiling stuff. Harrison, Theo Johnson is also a riser, just didn't make it onto the list here. I mean, he's not a crazy riser. Like I don't have massive hopes for him, but he did jump back into my early third round tier. I have him at tight end 25. So he'd be my next guy after Waller. I think you can move. I think I'd still expect Waller to outscore him the rest of the year. But yeah, it was a good week for Theo Johnson, certainly. And he's benefiting from a lack of target competition at the moment. All right, getting into the fallers here to close things out. Let's go to the top of the list. Starting with Trevion Henderson. This one sucks for sure. I already did the Mike Vrabel rant. He's just not getting the usage he deserves based on his draft capital and his prospect profile. I think it's just Vrabel and McDaniels being boomers. I'm not massively panicking. I want to be clear about that. I didn't move him down a lot. I moved him down like a half a dozen spots. And that is simply adjusting to the reality that he is not scoring points. We don't know when he's going to be scoring points. And there are a lot of good players around him that are currently scoring points. So it's like, Garrett Wilson is scoring points right now. Devon Achane is scoring points right now. Quinshon Judkins is scoring points right now. It's like, it's hard to justify ranking him over any of those guys when he's not doing it yet. So he's still a top 40 player for me. I still have him ahead of James Cook, which I think is arguably irresponsible. And maybe I should move James Cook up or move him further down below James Cook. I think that is the pressure point though for me. I would still rather have Henderson than Saquon Barkley personally. But yeah, when it comes to James Cook, I think that's kind of a reasonable, like, you could go either way situation. Next would be T. Higgins. I don't really know what we're supposed to do with T. Higgins right now. Like, he's barely startable. He caught a touchdown this week, but he's barely startable with Jake Browning at the helm. It's really, really rough, and it's not his fault, but it's just, if you're losing a whole season, you have to fall. I've moved him down to wide receiver 30. He is barely still in my late first tier. I just don't know. Again, you're talking about a guy who's barely usable the rest of the year. He turns 27 in January. He was already, in my eyes, a major regression candidate where I thought he was like a 14 or 15 points per game type of player anyway. If the Bengals aren't running at 100% capacity, like leading the league in pass attempts and Joe Burrow playing out of his mind, like he's not a wide receiver. He's just a mid wide receiver 2 type. So I just don't think the production that we're hoping for in 2026 and beyond is impactful enough to keep him high in the rankings, like a high opportunity cost player. I would just take guys that can help me now. I would rather have, I'd rather have, Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold if you need a quarterback. I would rather have Tucker Kraft in tight end premium. I'd rather have Jordan Addison. I'd rather have Quentin Johnston at this point. Jamie, I wouldn't trade him for a second. He's still in my late first tier. He's on that borderline between late first and early second. So I'm not like selling him off that low. I would rather hold him over that price. But I do think there are a lot of players that you could trade him for where it just makes sense. You're just getting more out of those players. Next, we have Justin Fields. Fields is playing himself out of a job right now. Like, he's putting up fantasy numbers. You can keep starting him the rest of the season, but he's playing himself out of a job. This organization is an absolute disaster, and Justin Fields is terrible. And that's what it is at the end of the day. Aaron Glenn is really trending towards like a one and done coach. I think that the most likely scenario is that everybody's gone after this year and that the Jets have a top 5 draft pick. And I don't see any world where Fields remains the starter next year. And I don't see him going to another team and becoming the starter. I feel like this was his last chance. I don't think he's making the most of that chance. And so his value at this point is entirely predicated on what he gives you the rest of the year, which, to be fair, is like probably top 8-ish quarterback production. But it's still hard to value that too highly. Next would be Derrick Henry. Guys, I'll come back and do questions as soon as I'm done with the followers. Derrick Henry, I moved down to RB22. The defense for the Ravens is simply too bad for Derrick Henry to get going. Like he needs these positive game scripts where they can just load him up with touches. And it's not happening. Whether Lamar's in there or not, it's not happening. He's not going to get nearly as many of those high carry, positive game script, wear him down in the fourth quarter type of games. And that's before you get to any questions about whether he's slowing down or whether he's lost a step. It's just not a good setup for him. So I think at his age, so much of his value was predicated on him being a top running back this year. He's not a top running back this year. So it's the sun is setting quickly on Henry. Bryce Young comes next. Bryce Young also playing himself out of a job week to week. I know he won this game against a really, really bad team. He's still made far too many mistakes. He continues to make so many mistakes. I put up a poll in the middle of the Panthers game about whether Bryce Young would be the week 1 starter for the Panthers next year. 66% of people voted no. So whether those people are right or not, that's the sentiment on Bryce Young. And you don't really want to be holding the quarterback in your league that nobody likes. So I don't know for sure whether he's going to get the bench treatment, whether he's going to be replaced in the offseason. But he's not playing well. The team is not good. They're going to have a high draft pick. It's concerning for Bryce Young, and you don't really want to start him. So I'd honestly rather have Tua, honestly, and I'd rather have Matt Stafford, who's playing like out of his mind. I don't care if he's so much older than Bryce Young. I'd rather just have the assured good quarterback now, rather than rolling the dice on the pretty bad quarterback that just happens to be young. And then we have the backfield mate of Bryce Young and Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard, I've moved down to RB26. I feel like he was sort of in this, I had him in this like middle ground in the offseason between like the really elite running back types. Not like that's the wrong way to put it. Like the locked in bell cow types like Jacobs. And then the like sort of fill-in guys like a Tony Pollard. I had him sort of in the middle of those players. And I'm moving him more and more towards that lower group because this team is bad. There was some potential that they could be better this year. They're not. They're a bad team. Rico Dowdle went crazy yesterday. And it's not that he's going to be the starter, but he's earning more touches for sure. And so I just think it comes down to Chuba Hubbard being a very solid player. He's good. He does some things well, but I don't think he's the kind of talent that's going to force his way into the type of workload that he would need to continue being like a 15 to 16 points per game running back. Like, there's no reason for the team to not get Dowdle more involved. And if they're not going to give Chuba Hubbard like 75% of the touches, he's not going to be anything more than a low-end RB2. Bad quarterbacks are continuing to be a trend here. Geno Smith is looking kind of washed. I don't know what's going on. I was a big Geno defender in the offseason. I think he was better than given credit for on the Seahawks. But man, some of these interceptions, dude, they are so bad. I don't know what he is looking at. He's not been dealt a great hand as far as Bowers being injured and like his surrounding cast being kind of lackluster, but he's making some really, really bad decisions. And he's an older quarterback. The Raiders could have an early pick. It's concerning with Geno. So QB 29 for me, a guy you don't really want to be starting right now outside of like maybe really good matchups. So that's a tough scene. And the last faller today is TJ Hawkinson. Moves down to my tight end 13. I actually have Mason Taylor ahead of TJ Hawkinson at this point. I just don't know what the point is for TJ Hawkinson. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to do with him. He doesn't do anything anymore. He got 2 designed targets in this game, and it didn't matter. He had a 17% target share overall on just a 0.7 ADOT. So he's getting like one of these weeks, he's going to hit the any second round pick list. Like, he's right there for me. I'm almost ready to do that because he's just not involved. Like, it's so clearly Jefferson and Addison, And that's the whole passing game. I don't know if he's washed now. I don't know if he just isn't right from the ACL, but it's not pretty right now for Hawkinson. Like he's close to unstartable. So yeah, it's brutal. Shane Murray coming in with the super chat. Love to see it. Appreciate that. He's got a big trade here, which is probably why he needs my help. Neighbors, T. Higgins, or a 2027 second. Or sorry, I should say Neighbors, T, 2027 second, or Dak, Rashee Rice, 2027 first. I think that I would go with the Rashee Rice side. I've got Rice as my wide receiver 13 in Dynasty. Neighbors at wide receiver 7 after the injury. Certainly there's a tier break between them, but I think Rashee Rice and the first is more than fair for Neighbors. And then you get Dak and Pitts for T. Higgins and a second. I like getting Dak. He's playing really, really well. He's a good quarterback. Super flex. You always need quarterbacks. Yeah, I would take the Rashee Rice side there, Shane. Thanks again. All right. We'll close out with a few more minutes worth of questions. I'll scroll back to some of the earlier ones here. What level of quarterback could I get for Rodgers in an early to mid first? I mean, I don't think that's really a package that makes a lot of sense, Cameron. I don't know who is looking to I don't know who's looking to move a high-end quarterback for a first, but also wants Aaron Rodgers. I don't know who, that seems like a very weird scenario. I feel like someone selling a quarterback like that would just be tanking. So I'm not really sure. I don't know if I'd be offering Rodgers in that type of a deal. I feel like an early first-round pick, you need to be aiming pretty high, like at least in the Jordan Love, Bo Nix range, but I honestly would rather save an early first for something better than that. So maybe the answer in your situation is actually just go see what it costs to get Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold or something, maybe Tua, and maybe save that first. Unless you can add a little bit more to the first and you can go up and get a Caleb Williams or, Justin Herbert, something like that. Cody wants to know, what should I trade Waller or Carter for? If you're not using those guys, a third round pick is awesome. Try for a third round pick. What do you do if you're like me and invest in the offseason to be a contender and now have a bare roster and no first? Well, Sam, there's not a lot you can do. I have one team like that, and the only reason I moved my first is because I had a chance to get Brock Bowers, and so I wanted to consolidate around a star player. I'll say in general, when you have a team like that that's really fragile, just don't try not to trade your first if you can avoid it. At this point, if you are clearly out of the mix, you want to be selling off the guys you have left, like Saquon, for the best values you can find. You can try to get your first back. If it's on a team that happens to still be in the competitive zone, you might be able to make a deal to get it back. Otherwise, you're just turning as many of your assets into picks and young players as you can. And then you are seeing what it looks like next offseason and potentially staring down the dreaded 2-year rebuild, which sucks, but it can happen when the whole house of cards falls down. Zeb, outlook on Kyle Williams and Luther Burden. I mean, I'm much, much, much more optimistic on Burden than Kyle Williams. For Kyle Williams, it's borderline over. He's in that third round conversation for me as far as rookie picks. I don't really care if you flip him for that. Luther Burden, I'm much higher on. He was a much earlier draft pick. He was a much better college prospect. He has already flashed with a huge game. I think he'll ultimately be fine, and I expect his role to grow. Trev, I feel like we do this every year with whoever happens to start for the Niners, and the answer is almost always no. Or if yes, then the team that signs him immediately regrets it. Mac Jones is just doing the same thing that all the 49ers quarterbacks do. They execute the scheme, and then they look competent because the scheme is insane. and then they go somewhere else and they can't handle it. So if anybody in your league wants to value Mac Jones like he is a starting quarterback now, then feel free to sell him to that person. Matt, if I'm contending and lost Hampton, should I be trying to trade for a running back now? I mean, it depends on your situation, I guess. If you don't have running backs to start and you're still contending, then I think you need to go look for a running back. Yep. Io Luan, I would take George Pickens and a 2027 first over Rashee Rice. Nick, I don't think this is anything. Barkley didn't practice. I don't think there's anything going on here. This is just veteran rest on a short week for a running back that doesn't need to practice. Barkley's not hurt and he's not going to miss the game. So he's totally fine. And the answer, I don't think it would be Bigsby. If Barkley was out, it looks like AJ Dillon is the guy right now that is operating as his backup, but I would suspect it would be like a split between him and Will Shipley. So we got another super chat here from Aiden Tahiri. Thank you, sir. Dynasty Superflex PPR. Allen for May / Genty and Neighbors. Yeah, that's enough for me to trade away Josh Allen. I have a slight lean to May over Genty, so I would absolutely take Drake May and Malik Neighbors for Josh Allen if that's an option, 100%. And I would take the Genty and Neighbors too, but I would rather have May. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up today. I don't think that I'm gonna be able to get to any more questions just because we're at an hour 16. I do need to wrap this thing up. You guys have been great. Appreciate you coming to hang out with me on Mondays to recap these games, talk some Dynasty takes. And if you have more questions, you can always consider becoming a member and signing up, and then you can come ask me questions whenever you want. Otherwise, if you watch this far in the stream, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And hope you guys have a great week. And hopefully you can find some people to fill in for Amari and Hampton on your Dynasty teams. Thanks, guys.